Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to yet another amazing session of part of our virtual campaign called A Tree of Knowledge. And it's like I've been saying, it's exactly that. I am sharing a platform with you guys to just give some insight into the lives of some amazing young professionals, activists, leaders, CEOs, graduates, and people that's just in the environmental and water space and sector. So we are very excited on this cold day to continue yet another amazing session. And today we have a young, amazing woman join us, Kim Williams, who is an environmental management graduate as well as an environmentalist by trade. Kim, welcome.
Hi, Margot. Thank you very much for having me here with you today. It's very cold, but we warm ourselves through it.
Yes, so Kim happens to be my best friend, so she gets the title of friendship. For those of you that are wondering, we studied together. And I'm just going to actually take the conversation straight there, Kim. What made you decide to study environmental management?
Well, a bit of an unconventional one. It wasn't my first option. Law was my first, and I never ever submitted the application. No idea why. And so environmental management, I think it started with my geography teacher who was so passionate about, well, her subject and also the environment, so getting out there and doing things outside, classrooms outside. And I think that just sort of encouraged me or gave me some sort of insight into where I wanted to be. I also wanted to be the weather lady, but that wasn't going to happen either. So this
You
is
never know,
the
though.
closest so this is the closest being to the weather lady that I can be, but love it. I am not sorry. I think this is where I needed to be. Yeah.
Definitely. And then, I mean, you've studied, you are still studying as well. You've continued your studies this year. You've worked in the sector as well for some time now. So just what are your thoughts with regards to the importance of environmental education and awareness? And you yourself have a social media platform called Cape Town Enviro, where you advocate for just awareness on environmental issues. So why do you think that it's just so important for us as society right now?
So I also started the page just for environmental awareness of things that's happening around us and also how we can make small changes. I think not enough space has been given to the importance of the environment and how we can help it and how we can live harmoniously with the environment without taking too much and being greedy. And we find that, we expect people to do things, but we don't uh, appreciate that maybe helping them to understand why we are doing something makes it a little bit more relevant to them. It gives them more of a cause to do something. So, for example, when we're doing cleanups, recently I went to a river cleanup and you were there with us. There's a housing, a suburb, adjacent to the river, and we saw quite a bit of dumping. Now, people are dumping because they probably aren't enough solid waste management resources for them. So if they've got all this dirt and they don't have enough bins or for disposal or to keep until bin week or bin day, they will just dump. So when we add the education to it, it helps them understand, oh, this is why we don't do it. So if we dirty the river, these are the health impacts that we'll see, these are the ecological impacts that we'll see. So there's education that goes with it. I mean, we expect people to reduce the amount of plastic that they use, but why are we doing it? You can't just say to someone, you must stop using plastic, but we don't break it down for them in simple terms of why that they never break down, they become microplastics, it affects marine ecology. And so that sort of is very important in how, I mean, when we studying, I mean, we need to know why we are doing this mitigation measure, because it will help with this climate change factor or something like that. There has to be an understanding of what we are doing and why we are doing. And if we don't do that, people will just think, why must I stop using plastic? I'm going to keep using it. I don't see the problem. But when we educate them about it, then it's a different story. Then I realize, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that is what I was doing. I thought I was just throwing it away here, but in actual fact, something else is happening somewhere that we don't know about, because we never get rid of the waste.
Yeah.
So if we educate people, we give them something to understand, we give them something to work towards and to remember, and it makes life easier also.
Yeah. And I think that education and awareness also creates a space where you can now compare convenience to consciousness.
Yes. Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, it's very inconvenient for some people to who are just literally struggling to survive, and now they must start being, eco warriors. I mean, that's not on the top of the list for their survival. But when we make them conscious of small things that they can do to help, the environmental education and awareness in terms of what they do, why they shouldn't do it, it is very different. So people who are trying to survive, they can separate their waste. It doesn't cost them anything. It doesn't hamper their survival. It just means that, buy whatever you have to because that's what your budget allows. But instead of just throwing it away, recycle it. There are companies or waste pickers, people who search your bins every week.
Yeah.
They will help with the recycling effort. So you don't have to spend money to help save the environment also.
Definitely. And you've spent, like I mentioned earlier, you've spent a lot of time in the sector as an environmental consultant. And just being in that space, how effective do you think our environmental policies currently are?
Sure. So we have good environmental policies. I always tell people this. We have very good legislation and we have very good policies. The problem is when it comes to enforcement, it's not as stringent as what it should be. If enforcement was as stringent as traffic officers looking for expired car licenses, or whether you have a driver's license, it would be a lot better, because it means now we've got something and we can measure. Things become a lot more tangible, where we can see enforcement of these policies. They're good. They're not all pie in the sky. Some of them are a little bit iffy, but for the most part, they are good. And if I look at the environmental management frameworks that the City of Cape Town includes in their district plans, these are good environmental management frameworks, but they don't get enforced as they should, because they've got all these other policies coming into play, land use management and heritage. And these can all work together, but effectively departments want to work in silos, the one's better than the other. And the same goes with our provincial government, and the same goes with national government across the board. And that is the problem, where we have these great things, we don't enforce it. And the problem also is that when we do start enforcing it, we are going to make reference to something that's always been there, and people are going to say, but this was never enforced. How come you're starting with it now? People ask questions, and it's a very valid question. How come now all of a sudden you're enforcing and implementing? But before, we never actually really dealt with this. So now, I would like to know how they respond to it, because I mean, you can't all of a sudden spring something on someone when it's been there all the time, and now you expect people to just be calm about it. When, I mean, imagine you're a developer, you've got it right somewhere, and now all of a sudden you can't do it because of the sentence that's been there for the past 10 years, but no one paid attention to it. I mean, why must I stop development if you haven't done this, or how you haven't told us about it, you haven't educated it, you haven't raised it with us? It becomes very problematic, because now people become defensive, and then our policies become, hogwash again.
Yeah.
When it doesn't need to be that way.
Definitely. And I mean, your answer actually leads us straight into the next question, which says, does society use opportunities made available to ensure that their views, their concerns, and their inputs with regards to projects affecting the environment are incorporated into future development and projects?
Well, this is a bit of a two-edged sword here. So, public participation is like a big thing, and it is very necessary. It's part of the legislation. So it's a legal requirement also through your process. I mean, same for land use management and same for heritage processes. There's public participation that is included. The problem is that it gets recorded to the EAP, the environmental assessment practitioner in this case, or the land use management professionals. They have to capture the comments and they have to respond to it, right? But the comments that we receive are not necessarily appropriate, right? So when it comes to public participation and there's development, people just say, I object to it.
Yeah.
Now that it doesn't hold anything. You know, a million people can send an email that says I object. But what are you objecting to?
Yeah.
What you need to go through the report or the project. You need to identify aspects that haven't been discussed appropriately, haven't been assessed appropriately. What kind of public participation was done? Were we just ticking boxes, or was it actually meaningful participation? We've come with a proposal and we're saying this is what we are proposing. What should we add? What should we not have? And have an iterative process where there's continuous involvement in these projects. Sometimes it doesn't work because developers have a very set idea of what they want within an area. Now, it's a harbour arch that's coming in the Cape Town CBD. I mean, there was public participation there. People raised concerns, but I don't think it was necessarily the comments were really looked at and really discussed, and people and the project went into proper, consultation with the people of Cape Town. It's a massive project, and at the end of the day, it is the developer who's getting the money. I mean, we say the project says a certain amount will be for affordable housing. What is affordable housing?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't just say affordable housing is for new professionals earning between X and Y, because a lot of those new professionals are not earning what you are wanting them to earn in that price range. So that becomes problematic also, because now we're setting it for a certain market, also affordable to a certain group of people. But we haven't considered the other people, the people who have to travel far and coming into work to town. We haven't considered them also. So. And the type of project is also what gets people going. So if it's affordable housing in a more affluent area, that gets the affluent people going. The people of the area, that gets them going. They're sending their objections, but I mean the objections on they don't understand the EIA process, and I don't think we do enough to necessarily explain what is required when you submit your comments within the EIA process. If they're now deciding to build a roadway, within a residential area that's going to triple the traffic flow within the area, and you've done a land use project and you've done environmental and heritage, and through all of that, there's been no noise assessment. I mean, that is problematic, right? So if that's not done, the comment would be that we've got this road, including traffic volume, but we haven't done a noise impact study for the residents also, in terms of comfortability and what is allowed, what isn't allowed, in terms of, the standards and norms within the noise assessment field. So those are the kinds of things that needs to be addressed on how people can effectively be part of the public participation process. You don't just send a comment, be like, I don't object, or send a comment to say, I want to be, you can say you want to be an INAP, but I mean, you essentially want to help the process to get it to a point that is inclusive of public comment, government, spheres of government, and then the developer also. So I think that integration hasn't happened yet, and it is needed. We really need it.
Yeah, I mean, you just answered very technically now, and
Sorry.
obviously, no, it's fine. This is the reason for this platform. I've been saying it with every single session. We want to make such information and just such insight into the field freely available to people. So just a follow-up question to that one. There's so much technical terms and things that you've just mentioned in your previous answer. Are we doing enough to bring that technicality to layman's terms for our communities to understand?
So we're supposed to be doing that. So the information sheet that you receive, or the media notice or the site notice, should be easy enough for any person who doesn't have a technical background, and the ordinary person, the housewife, the granny who's taking the dogs for a walk or something, and she reads this poster. They should be able to understand that, oh, this is what is being developed, and these are the impacts, and why it's applicable, and what the process is all about.
Yeah.
But we don't do enough. We just say this is the process and this is the legislation, and we've ticked all the boxes and off we go. We're fine. We're good. But that's not really what it is about. And I mean, people also don't get the chance to necessarily see their comments being responded to, because for basic assessment you just do one public participation, then you're done. You're fine. Or temporary land use departure, one public participation, you're done. But I mean, that's not what it is about. We tick boxes, but we really do need to do more, which adds quality to what it is that we are doing. I mean, sustainable development is not just the environment. It's got to do with the social aspect. It's got to do with the economic aspect and the environment, and how we all, get to that middle point where we are all where everything is being considered. That is the important part. And I think we in South Africa, I don't think we are quite there in terms, I mean, the work that you do and the work that I do, it's all underpinned by integrated environmental management with the aim of achieving sustainable development. But we're not really doing that if we are not, looking at all three aspects and more of sustainable development. And so I think more needs to be done with how these processes that require public participation is done. And I mean, that may be, I mean, that's a task that it's a big one, because you're not only speaking to the people who would be affected by development, you're also talking to public servants or people who work within local, provincial and national government departments, and we'll be speaking to the consultants also. And that's very difficult, because consultants maybe just want to do what it is that they need to do. Sometimes they do more, but because the project is so rushed from, let's say, national housing, they have a budget, and so in 2 years' time or 5 years' time, they must start with construction. So you have an EIA process, and so they really just need the consultant to get it done. The consultant has to just still do whatever they need to do in terms of the law, but then public participation is almost, it's a bit iffy. Not enough is being done. So there is another aspect that there needs to be, a workshop or conference or something that speaks directly to public participation, and how we bring technical reports, because there are technical reports, how we bring them and how we break it down into a medium that can be understood by anybody, absolutely anybody. So there's work that we have to do there.
Yeah. I just want to take a few points from that answer, and it's reminding me of something, because I work with a lot of, I work with CPUT a lot. So usually on orientation, I visit the students, or I actually go back afterwards to the first and the second year students, and I always engage with them. And there's one thing that I always tell them, is that when you applied, and I think this applies to any field, if you applied for your field of study, and you did that based on Googling the salary bracket or how easy it is to find a job in that field, and you based your decision on that, pack your bags and leave the classroom. Because I think with every field that we go into, if we don't go into that field with the passion and the eagerness to be in that field, it speaks to the quality that we produce as young professionals. And that is a message that I always give to our young academics and young graduates, that when you transfer or transform into that young professional, your quality of work and your work ethic is literally that thing that gets you into the door. It's not about your A's or your distinctions in class. It's not about how many times you didn't or did attend class while studying. It doesn't depend on if you took 4 years or 6 years to graduate and get your qualification. It comes down to the quality that you produce.
Oh yeah, definitely. That is true. I mean, especially in this field. I mean, you're not going to earn a lot of money as soon as you step in the door. You're not going to. I also feel that this isn't necessarily a field where one does make a lot of money. You know,
Yeah.
it's not the same amount as an accountant or
Yeah.
financial manager or a psychologist or a doctor. It's
Mm.
not like that. This is, yo, we're doing the Lord's work.
Yeah, definitely.
It's
I couldn't agree more.
I mean, people either love you or people hate
Hate
you, and
you.
you must, you have to have hair on your teeth. You have to be
Yeah.
strong. You have to push through. So it's definitely not. If you want to make a lot of money quickly, this isn't
It's
where
not the
you
field.
have to be. You actually have to be passionate about the environment and be conscious about the way you live and your lifestyle and how you do things, so that you can, just leave footprints and nothing else.
Definitely. So the aim of this virtual campaign is in aid of commemorating Arbor Month or National Arbor Month. So
Yeah.
just what are your thoughts around the commemoration of Arbor Month over these past few years? I mean, growing up from your childhood to going into the sector, what is your thoughts just around the commemoration of it?
I think it's wonderful. It's that little thing that we get to celebrate. The the importance of trees and what they do for us. I remember as a child we used to have just Arbor Day or Arbor Week, and it used to be all about trees, trees, trees. And as I got older, Arbor Week died out a little bit, and I'm only really seeing, in the past 5 years or so, where there's actually been, a lot of Arbor Week initiatives and activities and sessions and, well, now webinars and everything. And it's actually quite sad that we are not as strong on it as we should be. I mean, trees effectively provide us, with a lot of services. I mean, they provide us with the oxygen that we breathe. So
Yeah.
without trees, we would cease to exist. They provide nutrients, and they protect the soil. They provide habitat for our animals, and they're part of the diversity and everything that is required within an area. And they sort of they natural regulators also. I mean, they can tell us what's happening also. And I don't think we've done enough. I don't think we educate and we raise awareness enough about trees and the importance in one's life. I mean, we quick to buy all these indigenous plants, and that's great. But people don't want trees because it's maintenance and it's this and it's that. But imagine if no one wanted a tree in their garden, we'd just then be relying on open spaces or the forests for oxygen. But I mean, with climate change and everything that we do, forests are burning.
Yeah.
Australia had these wildfires. We've had wildfires in Cape Town in the past few years. Big ones. On
Yeah.
our mountains. We
The Knysna
forests.
area.
More forests have been burning. I'm not sure now. And I was reading an article, I think last week or the week before, where they were saying that there's this massive fire somewhere. I'm very bad at remembering things, but I mean, it was a fire that just happened
Yeah.
recently, and I mean, acres and acres, but there was no reporting on it, because everyone's mind is in this COVID pandemic, and you're just thinking COVID, 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 which, yes, we have to do it as important. But I mean, just because we're in a pandemic doesn't mean that our environmental efforts need to decrease or take a back seat. More so now than ever, this is a chance where we can show how sustainable development works and how it's all integrated. And so yeah, I think we need to do more about it. I think we need to have more initiatives for Arbor Week and Arbor Month, and we need to get more communities involved. People go where, if you only have 200 trees, that means you can only go to a maximum of 200 places to go and plant a tree. But that's only 200 trees. We are 7 billion people on this planet. So it would be nice if every year families got together, got a tree, and planted a tree.
Yeah.
The indigenous trees, indigenous to one's area, because trees. trees from the Karoo are not indigenous to the Muizenberg area, for
Yeah.
example. So we
Coastal.
can't just be planting all
Yeah.
willy-nilly also. And I think that's also important that we tell people that this is if this is where you want to plant, these are the types of trees that you would plant in this area. So we don't have people planting blue gum trees all over the place or so, or jacaranda trees in Cape Town when we shouldn't be having them.
Yeah.
They're not indigenous to South Africa. But I mean, those are the conversations that we have. So we have activities, because activities mean there's a sharing of information, or the sharing from the professional or the activist or the socialist, whoever's event it is,
Yeah.
and they are giving information over to the lay people, and that's important also. I mean, I think one of my dreams would be one day when I'm big is to plant trees,
Yeah.
in the in public spaces, so that um, there would be some sort of food for the homeless
Yes.
people, or anyone really. You're walking
Yeah.
past, you're hungry. I mean, that's access to food, but it's also a tree. It's doing its job also. So I think that's also part of the, where the thinking needs to go in, and we're not just planting trees, but how else can we make this relevant to sustainable development
Yeah.
over and above the important service that it provides us with oxygen. We definitely need to let that sink in a little bit more and do more so people understand that too.
Definitely. And then just to end off this session, I can't believe time has caught up with us already. Um,
So quick.
so as a young professional and someone that so strongly advocates for environmental protection and safeguarding, just in your opinion, what does 2030 look like? Because for me personally, if the pandemic has taught me anything, and I'm saying this as an activist, globally, we have so many countries that have signed the SDG agreement, but we are far from ready. And that's something that COVID-19 has really taught us. We are not ready because we treat everything in isolation. And like you said earlier, we are not zooming enough in on the fact that there's that integration and one speaks to the other, and you got to deal with everything collectively. So
Yeah.
yeah, just what are your thoughts about what 2030 looks like for us in terms of environmental protection?
Sure, I think 2030 looks. Uh, that's difficult. It's a difficult
Yeah.
one. But, at the same time, development must happen, and things need to happen, and people need to live. But I think it's a little bleak, just because we aren't reducing our carbon footprints. We are still consuming the things that we don't need to be consuming. We're still buying unnecessarily. There's food wastage. We
Yeah.
cut down trees because it's in our way. We get rid of it because it's in our way. There's a lot that we need to do, and it's true that during this COVID pandemic, the inequalities between different societal groups of people, it's been a stark contrast, and we can see it. And I know in one of my assignments I said that because they asked why is it important for environmental managers to know about the coronavirus, and where it comes from, and how we and how it can be managed and everything. And we're going through this, and one of the things that also picked up is that through my readings and in response to it is that we could have used South Africa, and any country could have used those 17 SDGs
Yeah,
as guidance to how we address this pandemic.
definitely.
For example, access to water and sanitation. I mean, it, they were saying wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. What if you live in an area where you don't have access to clean running water? Or you must walk 2 kilometers to go and wash your hands. I mean, you're not going to walk 2 kilometers or 4 kilometers in total every time you need to go wash your hands for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, that was one of the areas that they could have dealt with. Education. I mean, this was the time where we could have put measures in place for education to go online, to come up with solutions of how we go to those students in the rural areas. That was opportunity. Also with regards to gender equality, how we view females and their role in the pandemic. Um, well, also just gender-based violence also during this time. There was a lot, infrastructure efficiency and all those things could have been looked at through this coronavirus. And if countries address it in that manner, I think 2030 would have looked a little bit better, because now with coronavirus, now we have a whole lot of masks and gloves.
Yeah.
We didn't have polluting our environments. It didn't have to be the case if we thought about, okay, we have masks, we have gloves. How are we going to manage it? How are we going to address disposal? So that we don't end up with these things flowing or flying into canals, into the ocean. People just blatant disregard also, and just dumping and littering as they go along also.
Yeah.
So I think 2020. I like to say that I'm an optimistic pessimist, because I'm looking for the good, but I also have this, the reality in my mind that if we continue the way we are going, 2030 doesn't look great, because it is a mind shift that needs to happen, and people are not shifting minds right now. They are in COVID-19 mode, they're in survival mode, and we need to teach them that they can be both. So 2030 looks like a lot more development and a lot more loss of important open spaces and important biodiversity areas. I mean, the Two Rivers Urban Park is one of it, where they're proposing all that development on a heritage sensitive site. So I think we're going to have a lot more of that, because people want space to live closer to where they are. Development is needed for the economy, because for some reason we can't decouple it from environmental usage also, and reliance. So I think 2030 is not looking too good, but it's looking good also.
Great stuff. Kim, thank you so much for making the time just to chat with us and just share your views, your insight, not only as a professional, but also just as someone advocating so strongly for environmental protection. We thank you for everything that you are doing, using your platforms to continue that advocacy. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me and thinking of me. I hope you keep warm and have a lekker day, and your tree plantings also.